My parents never loved me. There was no reason. If anything, it was just because my younger sister was cuter. The only ones who ever loved me were my grandparents. My name is Samantha. I'm 45-year-old, born in the central city, but this spring I moved to the countryside. It goes without saying that I get excessively jittery every time I see large spiders or geckos. Reminiscent of my visits to my grandparents' rural home as a child. Seeing the bugs I'm not fond of reminds me of the old times. It's a very mixed feeling. But well, since those are warm memories, it's fine. My childhood was never happy. There might have been happy times, but I don't remember them. From a young age, my parents raised me differently than my sister, Erica, who is 2 years younger. That's why I love the yearly visits to my paternal grandparents in the countryside. I played house with my grandmother, crushing grass with stones, and my grandfather made woodcraft. I have plenty of memories. However, after my grandfather passed away when I was in kindergarten, my parents stopped going near the countryside. I later found out that my mother hated the countryside, calling it earthy and unpleasant. Since my father was under her thumb, I lost the only 2 people who played with me. My mother hated the countryside, but she disliked me just as much. I honestly don't remember much about my time in kindergarten. It is said that people tend to forget unpleasant memories under stress and rewrite them as good memories, especially children. What I clearly remember is being sent straight to the bath every time I returned from kindergarten because I was sweaty. My sister wasn't treated that way, so in retrospect, maybe it was just to instill in me that I was a smelly child. I fully realized the disparity between me and my sister when I entered elementary school. On the day of my entrance ceremony, my father didn't attend, saying, "Erica wants a toy." My mother complained endlessly, "Huh? But I want to go too." Thanks to that, I spent the entire ceremony looking at my sulking mother's face. Not to mention the typical scene at the school gate. Capturing a photo in a backpack didn't happen. At that time, I thought, is this how it's supposed to be? I was too young and didn't know any better. Because I didn't know other families to compare with. But 2 years later, at Erica's entrance ceremony, seeing our parents buy new clothes and a video camera made me realize the disparity between us. I wish I hadn't known, because not noticing might have spared me the feeling of loneliness. Erica took a photo in front of the school gate and our parents, all smiles. After Erica's entrance, I noticed other differences as well. Every time I had a parent visit day, my mother always arrived late. About 15 minutes before the end. Foolish me thought. Mom is taking care of Erica and is busy, but I'm happy she comes even if late. However, for Erica's class observation days, my mother would prepare the day before with a face pack. Moreover, she didn't show up at my parent visit on the same day. From that day on, my mother stopped coming to parent visit days. Eventually, my teacher said, "I understand you're busy, but please try to come on parent visit days." And she reluctantly came. But only 5 minutes before the end, and then she stopped coming again. There were no photos of me at sports festivals either. Erica was always captured in videos just standing in line. Whether I was dancing or doing anything, I was never preserved as a subject in any photos. My socks were worn until the fabric between the toes hurt. Even when holes opened at the big toes. You can still wear them, I was told. Meanwhile, Erica frequently had her clothes replaced. As I became aware of the disparity with my sister, a loneliness I had never felt before engulfed me. Do Mom and Dad hate me? So, in a moment of wanting some attention, when Erica was talking about getting new clothes, I tried to act spoiled and said, "Buy me some too." At the time, I was quite a well-behaved child. I thought their attitude was just how things are. And if I was good, maybe I would be treated like Erica. So, I thought surely they would grant my rare request. However, my mother, looking utterly annoyed, said dismissively, "Huh? Don't be selfish. If you keep talking like that, I'll put you in a facility," while snorting with laughter. My father also laughed and said, Hey, that's a harsh joke." "Well, Samantha, you're a good girl, right? Just endure it." At that time, I didn't know what a facility was. I looked up its meaning in a dictionary in the school library, but I still didn't understand. However, from that day on, my mother continued to threaten me with, "I'll put you in a facility," and even I came to know what it meant. I remember that night, tears wouldn't stop. My mother might have intended it as a joke, but for me as a child, it was as shocking as seeing the word despair come to mind. I still don't know why my parents disliked me so much. But I've heard that when siblings are close in age, parenting can be difficult, and gradually the younger child may seem cuter. Perhaps my family was a typical example of this. Regardless of my mother's true intentions, fearing that someday I might really be put in a facility, I became obedient to her. Then, one day when I was returning from elementary school with Erica, she stumbled on a stone and fell, injuring her knee on an awkwardly shaped drainage ditch. When I carried Erica home on my back, my mother was terribly upset and rushed her to the hospital. That night, I was yelled at by my mother, who was sobbing. "Why did Erica get hurt when you were with her?" Reflecting now, I was not at fault, and I had done everything I could for my sister. But at the time, as a fourth grader, all I could do was weakly apologize, "I'm sorry." When I inadvertently started to cry, my mother exploded. "We're the ones who want to cry. What if Erica is scarred for good?" My father, while trying to soothe my mother, said, "If it were Samantha who got hurt, I wouldn't have worried. I only walked home with my sister because Mom and Dad told me to, even though I wanted to go home with my friends." That thought swirled in my heart, and from that day, I gradually began to dislike my only sister. Strictly speaking, I didn't hate her. I wanted to get along and thought she was cute. She adored me, but I was just jealous of the affection she received from our parents. I even disliked myself for feeling this way. Why couldn't I love my sister? Why couldn't our family be normal? Consumed by these dark feelings, I lived each day to the fullest. Then, when Erica entered middle school, I was forced to quit the basketball team. It was a parental mandate to come home together. Erica, too, was forbidden from club activities by our overprotective parents, because of the injury she suffered that day. I had hoped to be away from Erica in high school, but my sister, who hadn't studied for the entrance exams, was forced to choose a school she was guaranteed to pass into. It was for us to attend the same school. For some reason, our parents wanted me to keep an eye on her, even though we wouldn't be together for the full 3 years. The fact that we had to go home together, just because we were in the same school, was bizarre. But strange parenting wasn't new to us. I wanted to resist, but without the ability to earn money myself, I had no choice but to comply, especially since they threatened not to pay my tuition otherwise. Later, despite Erica having the capability to aim for a higher level school, she enrolled in my high school as per our parents' projected future. At that time, I resented Erica so much that I barely spoke to her. And I don't know what she thought about her own educational path. I only remember that she always seemed timid around me. At school, we were ridiculed for always sticking together. And we both felt out of place in our class. Since almost all play with classmates was forbidden, we remained isolated. Erica's timid demeanor might have stemmed from that. I often wondered who could possibly be happy living like this. However, a turning point came in my senior year of high school. Our parents said, "We won't stop you from going to college. But only a junior college for you. Erica will go to a 4-year all-girls college." By then, they were afraid of Erica getting a boyfriend and going far away. They planned to keep her close to home, even if it meant higher tuition fees, to a women-only place. Thankfully, I was finally able to separate from Erica. And the 2 years I spent at junior college were truly enjoyable. The days of freely going home with friends and organizing study sessions are memories I will never forget. Then, in my second year of junior college, another happy event occurred. My grandmother, who had been living apart, injured her leg and came to live with us. My mother was very reluctant, but my father persuaded her. I was thrilled to live with my grandmother, which was a sentiment I felt for the first time toward my father. Perhaps because of my grandmother's presence. My parents didn't treat me as harshly as before. For the first time, I experienced days that were smooth sailing. One day, as my graduation from junior college was approaching, and I was preparing for the job induction ceremony, my mother said, "Why bother preparing a suit? You won't use it anyway." "Why?" "Because I contacted them and declined your job offer. With what you'd earn, you couldn't enrich our finances, right? So, just be unemployed and drive Erica to school every day." I sighed involuntarily. Sister, sister, sister. That's all that seemed to occupy their minds. Even my father chimed in, saying, "Be happy I'm saying it's okay for you to be unemployed." "Well, I'm not going to take care of you financially." I stared down at my parents, embarrassed by them. It was at that moment. "You were completely fooled, you foolish sons." My grandmother laughed uproariously, clapping her hands behind my parents. "Ha," my parents said, looking dumbfounded. Seeing my grandmother looking so amused, I couldn't help but laugh along with her. "Resign from the job offer? The company you thought you called about? Samantha's job is actually a friend's company where I run my own business." "What?" As my grandmother revealed this, my parents' eyes widened in shock. "What do you mean by that?" "Mother, why are you walking normally, eh? I thought your leg was." That was a lie too. My grandmother, who was supposed to have bad legs, walked briskly past my parents with a smug look. I knew that even if I secured a job, my mother would have declined it on my behalf. I had overheard my parents whispering about it before the job hunting season even started. "If we make Samantha drive her sister every day, no weird guys will approach her from a university with a possibility of marriage. We must completely keep men away from her." Seriously, they discussed such absurd things. I had hoped to leave my parents' home upon getting a job since I couldn't do so during college. Hearing their conversation, I was devastated. Was I destined to live a life tethered to my parents? During that time, a college friend who noticed my pale face expressed concern. Having never really had friends, being worried about by a friend was a new experience for me. Thanks to this friend, I was able to confide in them about my life and what had happened. It was my friend who suggested I rely on my grandmother, making me realize that was an option. Perhaps because of my upbringing, I had no sense of relying on others. I thought I had to handle everything on my own. From there, I got my grandmother's phone number and secretly contacted her from my friend's house so my parents wouldn't find out. I was silent, holding the receiver, not knowing what to talk about after such a long time. Then my grandmother said, "Is that you, Samantha? How did you know? Don't underestimate me." I wouldn't forget my precious granddaughter. I could hear my grandmother's laughter, warm and familiar. I cried as I told her everything. It was me who made up the story about my leg being bad to get that dimwit to take me in. My grandmother had skillfully used my father to make arrangements to live with us. She could have taken me in immediately. But since the university was known to my parents, I couldn't escape. So, she made arrangements for me to safely get a job out of state without my parents knowing. After my grandmother finished explaining everything to my parents, it was then. "I can't stand this house anymore either," Erica appeared behind my grandmother, tears streaming down her face. "What?" my parents exclaimed in surprise. "You hate it, why?" "We've been good to you, Erica." "That's right, Erica." At their words, Erica was silent for a moment, looking down. Then glared at our parents with eyes red from crying. "Good to me? Do you really think that? Since I was little, you've told me, Erica, your sister hates you, so leave her alone. Trust us. You lied and tore our sisterhood apart. I couldn't even choose the career I liked. Not just me, but my sister couldn't make friends either. Even though she was the only one who understood me, you did things to keep us apart." The first thing my grandmother did when she came to our house was listen to my sister's story. Honestly, at that time, I wondered why my beloved grandmother would listen to her, thinking I didn't care about such a person. But as my sister said, from a young age, our parents had instilled in her that her sister hated her. They said they were making a difference because I was a terrible sister. That it was for education. As she grew up, she realized how messed up our home was, but by then, she truly believed she was hated by me. That's why she was always so timid. She didn't know how much of what our parents said was true, and gradually became afraid to even speak with me. Like me, she hadn't realized that relying on others was an option. Had no friends, and was dealing with her problems alone. The sister I had always envied and been jealous of was also a victim of our parents. That didn't mean I immediately felt she was my precious sister. No matter what. I couldn't get rid of my jealousy. Maybe my grandmother understood that. She let us skip school and rented a room in a business hotel to give us time to talk away from our parents' eyes. We cried and vented our feelings to each other. My grandmother silently watched over us, exhausted from letting out our emotions. I fell asleep and woke up holding my sister's head to my chest. I had been jealous and resentful, but the truth is, I also felt she was just as precious. That was the moment I realized it. I couldn't immediately think of her as my beloved sister. But I was sure we could change. Thus, we decided to start over as sisters from that day. Well, since my job offer was still pending and we couldn't immediately act sisterly, because of our unpredictable parents, we couldn't leave the house safely yet. Why not? What will happen to us if Erica hates us? Samantha resents me. Erica has to take care of us in our old age. I can't trust Samantha with that. So it seems. My parents were abnormally opposed to Erica having a boyfriend, because they were planning for her to take care of them in the future. I thought they were just trying to dump everything unpleasant on me. But it seems they simply felt their lives would be in danger with me. Well, I'm confident enough that they should naturally worry about such things, given how badly they've treated me. I might not know what I'd do if I saw my weakened parents in front of me. So I couldn't help but retort, even if you ask, I won't do it. Are you crazy? Really, you're not a cute child, my mother glared at me. Yeah, maybe you're just like me, I said with a snort. And my mother made an ugly face as she clicked her tongue. It's no use saying you don't want to, Erica. You've already been accepted to a nearby university, right? Let's get along. My mother grabbed Erica's shoulder and began to persuade her with her own convenient reasoning. Ah, that too, I've told the school about the situation and submitted a withdrawal notice. Erica will be pursuing a career as a wedding planner at a vocational school out of state starting in the fall. What? How come? As my grandmother smiled and spoke, my parents' mouths hung open in astonishment. What foolish faces they made. My parents, who had seemed terrifyingly invincible in my childhood, looked pathetically weak in front of my grandmother's nimble wit and robust demeanor. Maybe you fools don't understand, but you shouldn't take away a child's dreams. Didn't you know that Erica has always wanted to work in weddings? Trying to send her to some random liberal arts college, really? At my grandmother's words, my father raised his voice. Children's dreams don't come true, so it doesn't matter. That was the moment. Then, my grandmother slapped my father's cheek and said, "While I'm at it," and delivered a slap to my mother as well. Holding their cheeks, my parents stared at my grandmother like little children. The pain and suffering these two have endured isn't enough with just this. But if you keep talking nonsense, I'll kick you too? Saying that, my grandmother mimed a kick. I was happy that these children had dreams despite such worthless parents. They grew up decently without rotting. I have a responsibility too, for not realizing this situation for a long time. Let me at least help make their dreams come true. See? She said, looking at us sisters and smiling. Hey, we are the parents here. How dare you just decide such things? Parents? Just because you're parents, you think you can do whatever you want? If that's the case, am I free to pour boiling water on that foolish son of yours and just leave him be? My grandmother said with a grin, and from the look in her eyes, it seemed she might seriously do it, causing my father to tremble. Anyway, I'll be the one looking after these children. What? Don't just say whatever you want, Mom. You don't even have the money. Before your father died, he said every time Samantha comes to our house, it seems like her parents don't care much about her. What? Back then, Erica was little and needed a lot of attention. So I thought that foolish wife of yours was just too busy taking care of her. Your father was worried that Samantha was being unfairly treated. That's why, even after your father passed away, I kept calling you kids because I was worried, but you just dismissed it as meddling. I couldn't do anything because I didn't understand the reality of your parenting. If there was nothing wrong, indeed, my actions were meddling. So, yes, I also bear some responsibility for these children's unhappiness. According to your father's will, he set aside some of his retirement funds and inheritance for these children. We'll use that to live out of state. With a firm gaze, my grandmother declared this, and my parents slumped, deflated. Do we just need to apologize? Then will you leave Erica with us? My mother said this as she stared intently at my grandmother. My father added, if that's the case, I'll apologize. Ah. That's just it. Why don't you understand? Do you really think that such an emotionless apology can remove the pain these children have carried throughout their lives? My grandmother raised her voice and expressed her emotions, her clenched fists trembling. Listen. Never come near these children again. From now on, I will take responsibility and support them. You two are nothing but poison to them. Sever all parental ties from now on. What, sever ties? You're just a grandmother, you have no right to say such things. My mother became furious at my grandmother's words. Then, is it okay if it comes from your daughter? Erica and I both want to sever ties with you. Standing before my selfish parents, I had been at a loss for words. But finally, I could speak my true feelings. Erica feels that way too. To that extent. To that extent, huh? It's easy for you to say. You were never decent parents to either Erica or me. That's why severing ties is the only option left. Why can't you understand that? Shut up. That's just it. You're parents who can't be reasoned with. I knew that, but it's really hopeless. Anyway, we're leaving this house with grandmother. Why, you'll let us know your address, won't you, Erica? Even now, my mother clung to the hope that Erica will surely. Which made me nauseous. My father finally realized there was no more hope. Watching my mother's foolish antics with a pale face. I absolutely refuse. I've always done what you wanted, but no more. Mom and Dad, please forget about me. I never had parents who loved me. You are strangers to me. Erica was a bit shaky, perhaps due to the long-lasting effects of being compliant. She was likely scared. However, looking into our parents' eyes and speaking her mind was impressively courageous, even for my sister. So, today is the last day we're in this house. We already have a new place to live. I'll come back for our things later, but I won't let you near the children, so be prepared. With that declaration, my grandmother took our hands and briskly led us out of the house. From then on, the three of us started living together out of state. There was a vocational school nearby my company that Erica wanted to attend, and my grandmother found us a convenient place to live. At first, being told we could freely interact with each other was honestly a bit awkward. But my grandmother skillfully mediated. It took about half a year, but I think we finally started to have a sisterly relationship. By the time Erica graduated from vocational school, we were going shopping together. And my grandmother and I were her practice partners for job interviews. We had become a good family. The night we celebrated Erica becoming a wedding planner is still a fun memory for us. Recently, my grandmother started asking us more frequently, "Hey, do you girls have someone special in your lives?" with a sly grin. As sisters who were inexperienced with romance, we would blush and exclaim, "Nope." But her questions reminded us, right, we're free to fall in love now. Having been without even friends for so long, romance had felt like something distant. It took a while for both my sister and me to trust others enough to have a boyfriend. By our early 30s, I was 31 and Erica was 29. We each started dating someone we met at work. After a long relationship, we both got married. My husband is a bit older and kindly accepted my family's unusual circumstances. Not with a sense of strangeness, but with empathy. Because of his understanding, I felt I could walk through life with him. Erica's husband had a similar family background, having been disliked by his parents and raised by his grandparents, who were very kind. He understood Erica's pain because he shared similar experiences. Our traumas were significantly healed by the presence of our grandmother and our husbands. It showed me that wounds inflicted by people can also be healed through new relationships. About our parents, I heard from my grandmother a few years ago that our mother had passed away and our father had become estranged from her after we left the house. Whether out of irritation or loneliness, he developed liver disease due to alcoholism. However, neither Erica nor I attended our mother's funeral or visited our father. It may seem harsh, but we were unsure how they would treat us if we reconnected. Afraid of their potentially twisted attachment, we chose not to see them again. This fear is something only those with toxic parents might understand. I have no regrets. Currently, I am raising two sons, one in middle school and the other in high school. They often argue over silly things like, "Don't read the cartoon magazine I bought before me." Watching them, I think, such foolish sons. But I also find it endearing. We sisters never had such times during our school days. That's why I hope my sons will always be close as brothers. Well, right now one is drawing on the face of his sleeping brother. Yeah, really, stay close. Erica is raising a little girl in elementary school. She's quiet and doll-like, much like Erica was as a child. However, last year, after letting my sons take care of her for a bit, she picked up some strange phrases which was a bit embarrassing to my sister. 2 years ago, our grandmother passed away. After Erica's wedding, she lived with me and cherished us sisters until the end. At the wedding, she cried and told us to be happy. Her last words to us were also about being happy. "Absolutely be happy," she said. Yeah, Grandma. Thanks to you, I think I'm the happiest person in the world. I can say that proudly. This spring, my husband's job transfer took us to the countryside, where our grandparents lived. My city-raised kids were shocked at first by the rural lifestyle. But they've come to enjoy fishing at the riverbank, and now they say the countryside is the best every weekend. They've also learned to catch crayfish from their classmates and are now proclaiming, "I'll become a professional crayfish or turtle fisher in the future." Son, I don't think that's a career. Probably. Although my grandmother is no longer with us. When I feel the countryside air, it's as if she's right beside me. Knowing her, she's probably still watching over us from nearby. Watch over us, Grandma, as Erica and I continue to find even greater happiness. Someday when we join you, let's have another girls' night out together. May the future, and the day we join Grandma in the same place, greet us with smiles. Today, as always, I live each day cherishing the kind thoughts my grandmother left in my heart. If you don't want to work, then get out of this house. Even though I finally got a job offer, having a freeloader like you around is demotivating and a nuisance. My sister Nicole, raising her voice in anger, blames me because she didn't like the dinner I made. So, that's why I. Cutting off my words, Nicole seeks help from our mother. Mom, say something. How long do you plan to keep this parasite in our house? This house is ours, right? Is it okay if our life gets harder because of someone like her? Well, now that Nicole has got a job, maybe it's time for the parasite to leave? It would be pitiful if she bothers Nicole. Ashley, you're old enough, so just leave the house. Hearing Nicole's words, our mother immediately takes her side. Empowered by having our mother on her side, Nicole goes even further. See, even Mom agrees, just get out. Don't ever come back. You're not part of the family anyway. Despite all the sacrifices I've made for the family, realizing that they never cared makes me incredibly sad. Feeling that staying here is just foolish, I quietly make up my mind. All right, I'll leave. And I'll never involve myself with you, Mom, or Nicole again. That's fine with you both, right? Hearing my decision, Nicole and our mother point at me and laughingly say, "Of course, that's perfect. With one less parasite, we'll save on living expenses. Now pack your things and leave." That's right. I have Nicole, I don't need a parasite like you. Well, I'll leave tomorrow, but can I take all my belongings? Obviously. Make sure you take everything and never come back. Having a freeloader like you related to me is a stain on my life. Take all your belongings and get out. Understood. Then I'll take everything that's mine. As if you have anything of value, pretending to be strong. While Nicole and our mother mock me, they reach for the food I made again. I leave them to it and return to my room. My name is Ashley, and I am 29 and single this year. I live at home with my mother, her new husband Jason, and my sister Nicole. Before she remarried, our mother was kind to me too, but after Nicole was born, she doted on her and didn't care much for me. Ashley, you're the older sister, so give in to Nicole. But this is something I bought with my own allowance. Nicole wants it. Don't be so selfish. Our mother takes the clothes I bought and gives them to Nicole. Yay! I really wanted this dress. Nicole receives it from our mother with a smile as if it's the most natural thing in the world. Ashley, buy yourself some new clothes with this. Feeling down after having my clothes taken, Jason discreetly hands me some money so the others won't notice. Is that okay? I'm sorry, I can't protect you more. Thank you, Dad. Jason is kind and tries to treat Nicole and me equally. But he can't often defend me openly in front of my strong-willed mother. However, having him there made me feel supported, the only solace I had. Thanks to him, I was able to go to college and graduate successfully. I'm going to live near the company once I start working. It takes too much time to commute from home. What are you saying? After we paid for your college, you're going to leave without repaying that favor? I won't allow you to live alone until you've repaid your debt to us. But if it takes 2 hours to commute to the company, I need to live closer. Wow, I'm appalled. You just want to make life easier for yourself by living away from your family. Anyway, I absolutely won't allow you to live alone. I had planned to leave home once I got a job. But faced with our mother's fierce opposition, I was forced to continue living miserably at home. Then, 6 years later. What? Dad has? Why so suddenly? He suddenly collapsed at work and didn't make it to the hospital in time. When Nicole started university, Jason suddenly passed away due to a sudden illness. What? I just started university. What are we going to do about tuition and other expenses? Our mother and Nicole only worry about their own future, leaving all the funeral preparations to me. Since you're not blood related to Dad, you shouldn't feel sad, right? You've been doing nothing but mooching off us at home, so at least be useful now. You're right, Mom. She's just a freeloader who lazes around at home even though she graduated from university. Dad just wasted his money on her tuition. Even during the wake, when it's just family, they continue to hurl abuse at me. Wanting to honor Jason's memory, I simply endure their insults. A few days later, after the funeral, we sort through the inheritance. Our mother and Nicole find a bank book in Jason's name and are delighted. Dad left us so much money, lucky me. Now I can buy the designer bag I wanted. That's great. Now we don't have to worry about Nicole's tuition or living expenses for a while. Maybe I'll buy some dresses too. Ah, of course, you don't get a share, Nicole. All the money Dad left is mine because I'm his real blood. You're not his real child, so you have no right to it. I never counted on inheriting anything from my stepfather. But Nicole still lashes out at me. I never intended to take anything in the first place. But since Dad left it, I just want it to be treated with care. Shut up. I don't want someone like you, who doesn't work and lives at home like a parasite, to worry about me. But I am working, you know. I've explained this many times. What? You say you're working while you're home all day? You're just delusional because you're an unmarried woman who can't make money and can't leave home, right? I definitely don't want to end up like you. No matter how often I explain my situation to Nicole, she never listens. However, I hope that once she starts job hunting, she might understand what my work entails. Thinking this, I, as an older sister, choose to overlook Nicole's harsh words. 2 years after our father's death, Nicole, now a junior in college, had finally started her job hunt. But perhaps because it's a tough process, she seemed more irritable than before. One evening, as we were all eating dinner, Nicole sighed heavily and said, "Ugh, I'm working so hard on job hunting and it's so exhausting too. Come home to see a freeloader lounging around the house. Isn't it unbearable? A freeloader? Who are you talking about? You, obviously. You don't even go outside, just lazing around the house. It's so annoying," I retorted to Nicole's accusation. Enough already. How many times do I have to tell you? I was working today, too. What? When I came back, you were leisurely reading a book on the couch. You call that work? That was a book related to my work. I've explained what I do to you many times. A job where you just stay home all day, fiddling on the computer or reading books, that's not a real job. Nowadays, even fresh graduates have to go to the office. Maybe the career you're aiming for requires going into the office. But there are jobs that can be done from home if you look. You're really annoying. I'm tired from job hunting. I don't want to hear a freeloader's ramblings. Nicole slammed the living room door and retreated to her room. Though I understood that job hunting was stressful, her increasing attacks on me were wearing me down. I sighed softly and looked over at our mother, who continued eating quietly. "Mom. Nicole won't listen to me at all. Can you please explain to her about my work? Maybe later. She's just stressed from job hunting. That doesn't mean she can act like this every day. I'm getting stressed too." Don't say that. Ashley, you're the older sister, so try to be more considerate of Nicole. Even when I asked our mother to persuade Nicole, she only pressured me to endure. Doubting the attitudes of our mother and Nicole, I continued to do what I could for my family. Then, one day, as I was bringing dinner to the table, Nicole screamed shrilly, "What is this meal? You're home all day and still make shortcuts in cooking. This week has been busy with work. It's okay to cut corners when I'm busy. If you have a complaint, why don't you cook for yourself? Ha, work? Your job, which can't even earn money, must be about managing the household perfectly, right? All you do every day is play on the computer or read books. That's why. I'm telling you, I am working. Just listen to what I'm saying for once." Despite my desperate responses, my words never reached Nicole. Glancing sideways at our mother, she just turned away, pretending not to notice. "If you don't want to work, then get out of this house. Even though I finally got a job offer. Having a freeloader like you around is demotivating and a nuisance. So, that's why I. Cutting off my words, Nicole seeks help from our mother. Mom, say something. How long do you plan to keep this parasite in our house? This house is ours, right? Is it okay if our life gets harder because of someone like her? Well, now that Nicole has got a job, maybe it's time for the parasite to leave? It would be pitiful if she bothers Nicole. Ashley, you're old enough, so just leave the house. Hearing Nicole's words, our mother immediately takes her side. Empowered by having our mother on her side, Nicole goes even further. See, even Mom agrees, just get out. Don't ever come back. You're not part of the family anyway. Despite all the sacrifices I've made for the family. Realizing that they never cared makes me incredibly sad. Feeling that staying here is just foolish, I quietly make up my mind. All right, I'll leave. And I'll never involve myself with you, Mom, or Nicole again. That's fine with you both, right? Hearing my decision, Nicole and our mother point at me and laughingly say, "Of course, that's perfect. With one less parasite, we'll save on living expenses. Now pack your things and leave." That's right. I have Nicole, I don't need a parasite like you. Well, I'll leave tomorrow, but can I take all my belongings? Obviously. Make sure you take everything and never come back. Having a freeloader like you related to me is a stain on my life. Take all your belongings and get out. Understood. Then I'll take everything that's mine. As if you have anything of value, pretending to be strong. Nicole and our mother mock me as they reach for the food I made again. I leave them to it and return to my room. Later, I hurriedly searched for a new place to live. And managed to find an apartment available for immediate move-in. As I was moving in, my phone rang. Picking up, I heard a loud voice on the other end. "Why did you take all the furniture and appliances? The house is empty because you took everything. Bring back everything you took right now." "What are you talking about?" "Nicole, you were the one who said I should take all my belongings. So, I only took the things I bought with my own money. I didn't steal anything that belonged to you or Mom." "What? What are you talking about, Nicole? Didn't Mom buy the furniture and appliances with Dad's inheritance? After the first anniversary of Dad's death, she replaced everything that was old." "No, that's not true. I bought those furniture and appliances with my own money. Most of Dad's inheritance was used to pay off Mom's debts." I continued to explain calmly to Nicole. "What? There's nothing left. Then, what about our living expenses until now?" Nicole, unable to grasp the situation, muttered in a faint voice. "If you're curious, why don't you ask Mom?" As I suggested this, Nicole hastily turned to our mother nearby. "What does this mean, Mom?" "That's, well." Hearing our mother's flustered voice, I sighed and spoke the truth. "I was paying for everything, Nicole. The living expenses and your tuition fees, all of it. I've explained many times that I earn a decent salary working from home as a software engineer." "No way. You're lying. You were just playing on the computer every day. How can you make money from that? You must have been using Dad's inheritance, right? And you squandered it?" Nicole refused to believe my story and even started accusing me falsely. I pressed on with the reality. I earned over $5,000 a month as a freelance software engineer. By studying hard on my own. More than half of that I put into our household expenses. But still, it's unbelievable that it would run out so quickly. The inheritance wasn't enough, and I covered the rest. And Mom continued to splurge, so there's no money left now. What? Then what about my tuition fees? If we can't pay, I won't be able to graduate from university. Didn't you have money left too? Why don't you use that? There's nothing left. It all went quickly because I bought department store cosmetics and brand items. That's why I told you to use it wisely. Nicole. What will happen if you can't graduate? We were counting on your salary. Mom, that's your problem. What will happen to me if I can't graduate? What? I don't know anything about that. As they blamed each other, I could hear Nicole and our mother shouting through the phone. Both seemed to finally understand their predicament, their voices tinged with panic. Well, if you can't pay the tuition, you'll have to drop out of university. And the job offer you received based on your expected graduation might even be revoked. That's terrible. Please, big sister, come back home. We're family, aren't we? If not, at least pay my tuition fees. Yes, if Ashley comes back, everything will be fine. Please, Ashley, you're our only hope. Let's live together as a family of 3, like before. After you drove me out and repeatedly called me a parasite. It's ridiculous to say we're family now. It's too late for that. With Nicole and our mother begging tearfully. I firmly ended the call and blocked their numbers. Later, Nicole and our mother, having lost the financial support I provided, failed to pay the rent for the house and were evicted. Unable to pay her tuition, Nicole was inevitably dismissed from the university. And her job offer was revoked as a result. Forced to drop out, Nicole managed to scrape by with multiple part-time jobs. Our mother, having rarely worked before, started as a cashier at a supermarket, but struggled with the unfamiliar work, leading to frequent arguments with Nicole over stress. As for me, I was finally living alone, enjoying the freedom and financial savings from not having to support the household. I decided to pursue my interests and walk my own path toward happiness.
I should have known something was off the moment Greg's mother, Marion, showed up unannounced at our house. The two of them thought they were being discreet, huddled in the study with the door closed, but their hushed tones carried through the hallway. "You have to tell her," Marion hissed. "Evelyn deserves to know the truth." My heart pounded as I pressed my ear against the door, straining to make out Greg's muffled response. "Wasn't supposed to happen? Mistake. Can't lose everything." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stumbled back, my mind racing. What truth was Marion talking about? What had Greg done? As the pieces started to fall into place, memories of Greg's late nights at the office and unexplained absences flooded back to me. The signs had been there all along, but I had been too blinded by love and trust to see them. The door swung open, and Greg froze when he saw me standing there. His face drained of color, and I knew in that moment that my life was about to change forever. "Evelyn, I can explain," he began, but I held up a hand to silence him. "Don't bother," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and heartbreak. "I heard enough." Marion averted her gaze, shame etched into her features. She had known about Greg's deception and kept it from me, her own daughter-in-law. "How could you?" I asked, looking between the two of them. "After everything we've been through, how could you betray me like this?" Greg reached for me, but I recoiled from his touch. "It's not what you think," he pleaded. "It was a mistake, a one-time thing that happened years ago." My mind raced, trying to process his words. A one-time thing? That didn't explain the secrecy, the lies, the guilt written all over their faces. "Tell me the truth," I demanded, my voice growing stronger. "I deserve to know what's really going on." Greg exchanged a pained look with his mother before turning back to me. I have a child," from an affair I had years ago. The room spun around me as the weight of his confession sank in. A child. Greg had fathered a child with another woman, and they had both kept it from me for God knows how long. How could you do this to our family? I choked out, tears stinging my eyes. How could you lie to me for all these years? Greg tried to explain, to justify his actions, but his words fell on deaf ears. The man I had loved, the man I had built a life with, was a stranger to me now. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The hurt and betrayal gave way to a burning determination. I would not be a victim in this story. I would not let Greg's deceit define me. "Get out," I said, my voice steady and unwavering. "Both of you, get out of my house." Marion opened her mouth to protest, but I cut her off. "No, you don't get to speak, not after you enabled this for who knows how long." Greg looked at me, pleading, but I had made up my mind. The life we had built together was over, and it was time for me to start writing a new chapter, one where I took control of my own destiny. As they left, I felt a strange sense of clarity wash over me. The road ahead would be long and painful, but I was ready to face it head on. Greg's betrayal had shattered my world, but it would not break me. I was Evelyn Parker, and I was just getting started. After kicking Greg and his mother out of the house, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a steely resolve to uncover the full extent of Greg's deception. I paced the living room, my mind racing. How could he have done this to me, to our family? The man I thought I knew was nothing but a lie. The sound of the front door opening snapped me out of my thoughts. Greg stood in the doorway, his expression a mix of guilt and desperation. "Evelyn, please let me explain," he pleaded, taking a step towards me. I held up a hand, stopping him in his tracks. "Explain what, Greg? How you've been lying to me for years. How you fathered a child with another woman." His shoulders slumped, and he averted his gaze. "It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. It didn't mean anything." "Didn't mean anything?" I scoffed. "You have a child, Greg. A living, breathing human being that you've been keeping from me and our daughters." He flinched at the mention of our girls, and I felt a pang of guilt for the pain this would inevitably cause them. But they deserved to know the truth about their father. "I never meant to hurt you," Greg said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was going to tell you, I swear." "When, Greg?" I demanded. "When were you going to tell me that our entire marriage has been built on lies?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out. We both knew there was no good answer, no justification for what he had done. "Get out," I said, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. "I don't want to see your face again until you're ready to come clean about everything." Greg looked like he wanted to protest, but something in my expression must have stopped him. He turned and left without another word, the weight of his betrayal hanging heavy in the air. As the door closed behind him, I sank onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? Just a few hours ago, my life had been perfect, or so I thought. The sound of footsteps made me look up. Marion stood in the doorway, her expression a mix of shame and pity. "I'm so sorry, Evelyn," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I should have told you the truth from the beginning." I stared at her, my anger reigniting. "You knew? You knew about Greg's affair and his child, and you said nothing?" She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I wanted to protect my son, to protect our family, but I see now that I was only enabling his lies." "You're damn right you were," I snapped, rising to my feet, "and in the process, you betrayed me just as much as he did." Marion flinched at the venom in my words, but she didn't try to defend herself. She knew there was no excuse for her actions. "I never meant to hurt you, Evelyn," she said softly. "You've been like a daughter to me, and I've failed you in the worst way." Her words did little to soothe the ache in my heart. But as I looked at her, I saw a woman consumed by guilt and regret, and I knew that her punishment would be living with the consequences of her choices. "Just go," I said, my voice weary. "I can't deal with either of you right now." Marion nodded, her shoulders slumped in defeat. As she turned to leave, she paused and looked back at me. "For what it's worth, I'm on your side now," she said. "Whatever you need, I'll help you get the justice you deserve." I didn't respond, watching in silence as she left. Her offer rang hollow in my ears. The only thing I wanted was to go back in time, to a place where my life hadn't been shattered by the people I loved most. But that was impossible. All I could do now was pick up the pieces and try to rebuild something from the wreckage of my marriage. And if that meant seeking revenge on Greg, so be it. After Greg and Marion left, I felt utterly alone. The life I had built, the family I thought I had, it was all a lie. I needed someone in my corner, someone who could help me make sense of this nightmare. Loretta, my best friend, would know what to do. She had been through her own marital hell years ago, when her husband cheated. If anyone could understand the pain and betrayal I was feeling, it was her. I dialed her number with shaking hands, the tears I had been holding back finally spilling over. "Evelyn, what's wrong?" Loretta's concerned voice came through the line. I tried to speak, but the words caught in my throat. How could I even begin to explain the depths of Greg's deception? "It's Greg," I managed finally. He had an affair. And there's a child, Loretta. He has a child with another woman." There was a beat of stunned silence on the other end of the line. "Oh, honey," Loretta said softly. "I'm so sorry. I'm coming over right now, okay?" Relief washed over me. I needed Loretta's strength now more than ever. True to her word, she arrived at my doorstep 20 minutes later, enveloping me in a fierce hug as soon as I opened the door. "Tell me everything," she said, her voice gentle but firm as she led me to the couch. So I did. I poured out the whole sordid story, overhearing Greg and Marion's conversation, the revelations about his affair and secret child, his feeble attempts at justification. Loretta listened intently, her expression growing darker with each new detail. "That lying son of a bitch," she spat when I finished. "How could he do this to you, to your family?" I shook my head, feeling numb. I don't know. I thought our marriage was solid, that we were happy. But clearly I was just deluding myself. Loretta took my hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "You are not to blame here, Evelyn. This is all on Greg and his selfish, despicable actions." Her words ignited a spark of determination within me. She was right. I wasn't the one who had betrayed our vows, our family. Greg was the one who had shattered everything we had built together. "I need to know the full truth," I said, my voice hardening. "I need to know every sordid detail of his affair, every lie he's told me over the years." Loretta nodded, her expression resolute. "Then that's what we'll do. We'll dig into this thing until we uncover every last secret Greg has been keeping from you." A sense of purpose washed over me. I was done being the victim in this story. It was time to take control and seek the justice I deserved. Over the next few days, Loretta and I became amateur detectives, scouring through Greg's emails, bank statements, anything that could shed light on his double life, and what we found only deepened the wound of his betrayal. Receipts for expensive jewelry and hotel stays. Tender emails exchanged with his mistress, filled with promises of a future together. Bank transfers to an account I had never known about, siphoning off money that should have been going to our family. With each new revelation, the man I thought I knew became more and more of a stranger. But the pain was tempered by a growing sense of determination. Greg had made his bed, and now it was time for him to lie in it. The final piece of the puzzle came in the form of a letter tucked away in a box of Greg's old things in the attic. It was from his mistress, Angela, written years ago, but still dripping with venom. "You promised we would be together," it read. "You promised to leave your wife and build a life with me and our son, but you were just using me, using us, and I'll never forgive you for that. Our son." The words hit me like a physical blow. So it was true. Greg had a child out there, a living, breathing human being that he had rejected and abandoned. As I read the letter again, something shifted inside me. This wasn't just about Greg's betrayal of me anymore. It was about the lives he had destroyed, the innocent people he had hurt in his selfish pursuit of gratification. I looked at Loretta, my eyes blazing with a newfound sense of purpose. "We need to find this Angela," I said, my voice steely with determination. "And we need to make Greg pay for what he's done." Loretta nodded, a grim smile playing across her lips. "Whatever it takes, Evelyn. That bastard is going to wish he never crossed us." The path ahead was long and uncertain, but one thing was clear. Greg's web of lies was about to unravel, and I would be the one holding the scissors. Just when I thought the worst was over, the universe decided to throw another curveball my way. Jessica and Laura, my 2 daughters, came home for their regular weekend visit, blissfully unaware of the turmoil that had erupted in our family. As soon as they walked through the door, I could sense something was off. The usual warmth and laughter were replaced by a palpable tension that hung thick in the air. "Mom, is everything okay?" Jessica asked, ever the perceptive one. I forced a smile, not wanting to burden them with the truth just yet. "Of course, honey, why wouldn't it be?" Laura frowned, her brow furrowing. "Where's Dad? He's usually here to greet us." My heart clenched at the mention of Greg. How could I possibly explain his betrayal to our daughters, the two people he had sworn to love and protect above all else? "Your father," I began, but the words stuck in my throat. Jessica's eyes narrowed, and she exchanged a worried glance with her sister. "Mom, what's going on? You're scaring us." In that moment, I knew I couldn't keep them in the dark any longer. They deserved to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. "Girls, there's something I need to tell you," I said, gesturing for them to sit down. "It's about your father." I proceeded to lay out the sordid details of Greg's affair and the existence of his illegitimate child. With each revelation, their expressions morphed from confusion to disbelief to utter devastation. "No, that can't be true," Laura whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Dad would never do something like that." Jessica, ever the strong one, clenched her jaw, her eyes blazing with anger. "That lying bastard," she spat. "How could he do this to us, to our family?" I reached out to comfort them, but Laura recoiled from my touch, her body shaking with sobs. In that moment, I felt utterly helpless, unable to shield my daughters from the pain their father had inflicted upon us all. The sound of the front door opening made us all turn. Greg stood in the entryway, his expression a mix of guilt and apprehension. "Girls, I can explain," he began, but Jessica cut him off with a withering glare. "Save it, Dad," she snarled. "We know all about your little secret family." Greg flinched as if he'd been struck, his gaze shifting to me accusingly. "Evelyn, why would you tell them?" "They didn't need to know." "Didn't need to know?" I echoed incredulously. "They're your daughters, Greg. They deserve the truth, no matter how ugly it might be." Laura rose to her feet, her eyes red-rimmed but her expression hardening. "How could you do this to us, Dad? To Mom? We trusted you, and you betrayed us in the worst way possible." Greg opened his mouth, but no words came out. For once, the man who had spun a web of lies for years was rendered speechless. "I think you should leave," Jessica said, her voice low and dangerous. "We don't want you here right now." Greg looked like he wanted to protest, but one glance at the fury etched on our faces must have convinced him otherwise. He turned and left without another word, the weight of his actions hanging heavy in the air. As the door closed behind him, I gathered my daughters in a fierce embrace, our tears mingling together. In that moment, we were united in our pain and betrayal, like a bond forged by the man who had sworn to love and protect us above all else. "We'll get through this together," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "Greg may have shattered our family, but he hasn't broken us." Jessica and Laura clung to me, their bodies shaking with sobs. But beneath the pain, I could sense a steely resolve taking root, a determination to make Greg pay for what he had done, no matter the cost. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but we would face it as a united front. Greg's lies had torn us apart, but they had also brought us closer together than ever before. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would emerge stronger and more resilient than ever before. In the aftermath of Greg's betrayal, I found myself at a crossroads. Part of me wanted to curl up and lick my wounds, to retreat from the world that had so thoroughly shattered my illusions, but a stronger, more defiant part of me knew that I couldn't let Greg's actions define me. I needed to take control, to seek justice not just for myself, but for all the lives he had so carelessly upended. That's when I remembered Angela, Greg's former mistress, the woman he had used and discarded like a piece of trash. If anyone understood the depths of his deception, it was her. Tracking her down wasn't easy, but Loretta's investigative skills proved invaluable. After weeks of digging, we finally uncovered an address in a modest neighborhood across town. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Loretta asked as we pulled up to the nondescript house. "This woman has every reason to hate you." I took a deep breath, steeling my resolve. "I have to try. She's the only one who can help me understand the full scope of what Greg has done." Loretta gave me a reassuring squeeze on the shoulder before I made my way up the cracked sidewalk to the front door. With trembling fingers, I rang the bell. The door swung open, and a woman with tired eyes and a guarded expression stood before me. Even without an introduction, I knew this was Angela. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone laced with suspicion. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "My name is Evelyn Parker. I'm Greg's wife." Her expression hardened, and for a moment I thought she might slam the door in my face. But then something shifted in her eyes, a glimmer of recognition, of shared pain. "I see," she said finally. "I suppose you're here about our son. Our son." The words hit me like a physical blow, but I refused to let my emotions show. "Among other things, yes. May I come in?" Angela hesitated for a moment before stepping aside, allowing me to enter the modest living room. As I took a seat on the well-worn couch, a teenage boy emerged from one of the bedrooms, his features a striking blend of Greg's and Angela's. "Tobias, this is Evelyn," Angela said, her voice softening as she addressed her son. She's your father's wife." Tobias's eyes widened, and he regarded me with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. In that moment, I saw the weight of Greg's actions reflected in his eyes, the burden of being an unwanted secret, a constant reminder of his father's betrayal. "I won't beat around the bush," I said, turning my attention back to Angela. "I know about Greg's affair, and I know about Tobias. What I don't know is the full extent of his lies and manipulation." Angela's expression hardened once more, and she let out a bitter laugh. "Where do I even begin? Greg promised me the world. He said he would leave you, that we could be a real family. But it was all lies, just another way for him to get what he wanted without any real consequences." As she spoke, the pieces began to fall into place. Greg's frequent business trips, his unexplained absences, they had all been part of his double life, a life he had so carefully constructed to keep us all in the dark. "He left me to raise Tobias alone," Angela continued, her voice thick with emotion. "No child support, no acknowledgement of his existence, just empty promises and a lifetime of pain." I reached out and took her hand, my own eyes stinging with tears. "I'm so sorry," I said, the words feeling woefully inadequate. "You didn't deserve any of this." Angela squeezed my hand, her expression softening. "Neither did you, Evelyn. We were both victims of Greg's selfish games." In that moment, I knew what I had to do. Greg had torn our lives apart, but in doing so, he had also forged an unlikely bond between Angela, Tobias, and myself, a bond born of shared betrayal and a thirst for justice. "We can't let him get away with this," I said, my voice hardening with resolve. "He needs to pay for what he's done to all of us." Angela nodded, her eyes blazing with determination. "I'm with you, Evelyn. It's time we made Greg face the consequences of his actions once and for all." Tobias stepped forward, his jaw set in a defiant line. "Count me in, too. I want to know why my own father abandoned me, why he treated me like a dirty secret." In that moment, an unlikely alliance was formed. 3 people united by a common goal, to make Greg answer for his lies and seek the justice we all so desperately craved. It would be a long and difficult road, but together we were stronger than the web of deceit he had spun. As I looked at Angela and Tobias, I saw not just allies, but kindred spirits, people who had been wronged in the most profound way, but who refused to let that define them. We were survivors, fighters, and we would not rest until Greg's carefully constructed facade came crumbling down around him. The battle lines had been drawn, and there was no turning back. Greg had made his choices, and now it was time for him to face the consequences. With Angela and Tobias as unlikely allies, a plan began to take shape. We would confront Greg, lay bare the full extent of his lies and betrayal, and force him to face the consequences of his actions. But we couldn't do it alone. We needed to expose his web of deceit to the people closest to him, the ones he had so carefully kept in the dark. That's when Marion re-entered the picture. Despite her initial complicity in protecting Greg, she had ultimately chosen to stand by my side. Her eyes finally opened to the depths of her son's depravity. Together, we would make Greg's carefully constructed facade come crumbling down around him. The confrontation was set for a Sunday afternoon at a local restaurant, a public setting where Greg's lies would be laid bare for all to see. As Angela, Tobias, and I took our seats, my heart pounded with a mix of nervous anticipation and righteous fury. Greg arrived a few minutes later, his brow furrowed in confusion when he saw our unlikely gathering. "Evelyn, what's going on here?" he asked, his voice laced with suspicion. Before I could respond, Marian stepped forward, her expression one of steely determination. "It's time you faced the truth, Gregory," she said, using his full name in a rare display of seriousness. "These people know everything about your lies, your betrayal, and they're here to make sure you can't hide from it any longer." Greg's eyes widened as he took in Angela and Tobias, realization dawning on his features. "You," he stammered, pointing an accusatory finger at Angela. "What lies have you been telling my wife?" Angela met his gaze unflinchingly. "The only lies here are the ones you've been spinning for years, Greg. It's time you owned up to the fact that you have a son, a child you abandoned without a second thought." Tobias stepped forward, his jaw set in a defiant line. "I'm not a secret anymore, Dad. I'm here in the flesh, and I want answers. Why did you leave us? Why did you treat me like I didn't even exist?" Greg's eyes darted around the restaurant, panic setting in as he realized the scene we were causing. "This is ridiculous," he sputtered. "Evelyn, you can't honestly believe these people over your own husband." I rose to my feet, my hands balled into fists at my sides. "Don't you dare try to play the victim here, Greg. I know everything, the affairs, the lies, the secret bank accounts. You've been living a double life for years, and it's time you paid the price for it." Greg opened his mouth to respond, but Marian cut him off, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. "Don't even try to deny it, son," she spat. "I've seen the evidence with my own eyes. You've disgraced our family, disgraced everything we stand for, all for your own selfish desires." The restaurant had fallen silent, all eyes trained on our explosive confrontation. Greg looked around wildly, his carefully cultivated persona crumbling before our very eyes. "You're all delusional?" he snarled, his composure finally cracking. "Evelyn, how could you believe these people over me, your own husband?" I met his gaze, my eyes hard and unyielding. "Because they're not the ones who betrayed me, Greg. You are, and now everyone is going to know exactly what kind of man you really are." With those words, the dam broke. Angela, Tobias, and I laid out the sordid details of Greg's double life, his lies and manipulations, his utter disregard for the people he had sworn to love and protect. And with each damning revelation, Greg's protests grew weaker, his excuses more feeble. By the time we were finished, the entire restaurant was enveloped in a stunned silence. Greg stood alone, his reputation in tatters, his carefully constructed facade shattered beyond repair. As he turned to leave, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Marian called out to him one final time. "You've made your bed, Gregory," she said, her voice laced with disappointment and regret. "Now you can lie in it, alone." And just like that, the man who had once been the center of my world was gone, reduced to a mere shadow of the person I thought I had known. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of liberation, as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. With Greg's lies had nearly destroyed me, but in the end, they had only made me stronger. With Angela, Tobias, and my newfound support system at my side, I was ready to start rebuilding my life on my own terms, a life free from the shackles of deception and betrayal. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Greg had played his games, spun his lies, but in the end, the truth had prevailed. And as I looked around at the faces of my allies, my family, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, united by our shared strength and resilience. The battle had been won, but the war was just beginning. And this time, I was the one calling the shots. In the aftermath of our explosive confrontation with Greg, the shockwaves rippled through every aspect of our lives. His carefully constructed facade had been shattered, leaving him exposed and vulnerable in a way I had never seen before. Within days, the news of his betrayal had spread like wildfire through our social circles. Friends and acquaintances who had once admired and respected him now looked upon him with a mix of disgust and pity. Greg's reputation, the very thing he had worked so hard to cultivate, was in tatters. But as Greg's world crumbled around him, mine was just beginning to rebuild. With Angela, Tobias, and my newfound support system at my side, I felt a sense of empowerment and purpose that had been missing for far too long. Marian, once Greg's staunchest defender, was now one of my closest allies. The guilt and shame she felt over enabling her son's lies had given way to a fierce determination to make amends, to stand by my side as I navigated this new chapter of my life. "I failed you, Evelyn," she said to me one afternoon, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I let my blind devotion to Gregory cloud my judgment, and in doing so, I betrayed the woman who has been like a daughter to me." I reached out and took her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "What's done is done, Marian. All we can do now is move forward together." She nodded, her expression resolute. "You have my word, Evelyn. From this day forward, I will be the ally and support system you deserve. Gregory has made his choices, and now he must face the consequences." True to her word, Marian became a pillar of strength in the days and weeks that followed. As Greg's desperate attempts to reconcile were met with stony silence from all corners, she stood firm in her rejection of his pleas. "You brought this upon yourself, son," she told him during one particularly heated exchange. "You betrayed not just Evelyn, but this entire family. And for what? A fleeting moment of selfish pleasure?" Greg, once so confident and self-assured, withered under his mother's withering gaze. It was a stark reminder of just how far he had fallen, how thoroughly his lies had alienated him from those who had once been his biggest supporters. As for me, I found myself buoyed by a newfound sense of independence and purpose. The job I had once seen as a mere means to an end had taken on a new significance, a way for me to assert my self-worth and financial independence. It was during this time that an unexpected opportunity presented itself. A managerial position, one that would not only provide greater financial security, but also a chance to prove my leadership capabilities. "You've more than earned this, Evelyn," my boss told me as she extended the offer. "Your resilience and determination in the face of such personal turmoil have been an inspiration to us all." I accepted without hesitation, relishing the chance to take control of my own destiny. No longer would I be defined by Greg's actions or the life he had tried to force upon me. This was my chance to forge my own path, to show the world that I was more than just a victim of circumstance. As I settled into my new role, I found myself drawing strength from the support system that had rallied around me. Angela, once a bitter rival, had become a trusted confidant, her own experiences with Greg's betrayal giving her a unique perspective on the challenges I faced. "We're survivors, Evelyn," she told me one evening as we shared a bottle of wine. "Greg tried to break us, but in the end, he only made us stronger." Tobias, too, had become an integral part of my life, a constant reminder of the collateral damage wrought by Greg's selfish actions. As he navigated the turbulent waters of adolescence, I found myself drawn to his quiet strength and resilience, qualities that had been forged in the fires of his father's abandonment. Together, we formed an unlikely family unit, bound not by blood but by a shared experience of betrayal and a determination to rise above it. And as the months passed, I found myself looking to the future with a sense of hope and optimism that had been sorely lacking for far too long. Greg's desperate attempts to worm his way back into our lives were met with a united front of indifference and disdain. He had made his choices, and now he would have to live with the consequences, a life spent on the fringes, a mere shadow of the man he had once been. As for me, I was done living in his shadow. With each passing day, I felt myself growing stronger, more confident in my ability to forge my own path. The scars of Greg's betrayal would never fully heal, but they had become a badge of honor, a testament to my resilience and determination to rise above the ashes of my former life. And as I looked ahead to the future, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them head-on, surrounded by the love and support of those who had become my true family. A family forged not by blood, but by the fires of adversity and the unbreakable bonds of sisterhood. In the months that followed Greg's downfall, a profound shift took place within our unlikely sisterhood. What had begun as a shared mission of revenge and retribution evolved into something far more profound, a movement dedicated to empowering and supporting women who had faced similar betrayals. It started small, with Loretta, Angela, Marian, and I meeting for weekly coffee dates, sharing our stories and offering each other the kind of understanding and solidarity that could only come from those who had walked the same painful path. But word soon spread, and before long, our little gathering had grown into a full-fledged support group, a safe haven for women seeking to rebuild their lives in the aftermath of betrayal. "We're more than just survivors," Loretta declared at one of our early meetings. "We're warriors, fighters who have stared down the darkness and emerged stronger on the other side." Her words resonated deeply with all of us, a rallying cry for the resilience and determination that had carried us through our darkest hours. We were no longer victims, defined by the actions of the men who had wronged us. We were women in control of our own destinies, forging new paths on our own terms. As our numbers grew, so too did our sense of purpose. We began organizing workshops and seminars, sharing our stories, and offering practical advice on everything from navigating the legal system to rebuilding self-esteem in the wake of emotional trauma. Marian, ever the matriarch, took a particular interest in mentoring the younger women in our group, offering a wisdom and perspective that could only come from a lifetime of experience. "You are not defined by the actions of others," she would say, her voice firm but laced with warmth. "You are strong, capable women with the power to shape your own futures." Angela, too, became a driving force within our movement, her own experiences with Greg's betrayal lending a raw authenticity to her words. She and Tobias formed an unbreakable bond, a living testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity. "We may have been dealt a tough hand," Angela would tell our group, her arm draped protectively around her son's shoulders, "but it's up to us to decide how we play the cards we're given." As for me, I found myself drawn into a leadership role almost by default. My story, the public unraveling of Greg's lies, had become a rallying cry for women seeking to reclaim their power and agency. And as my newfound confidence and independence blossomed, so too did my determination to use my platform to inspire and empower others. "We are not victims," I would say, my voice ringing out with conviction. "We are survivors, warriors who have faced down the darkness and emerged stronger on the other side." My words seemed to strike a chord, resonating with women from all walks of life who had found themselves betrayed and belittled by the men who were supposed to love and cherish them. And as our movement grew, so too did the sense of sisterhood and solidarity that bound us together. Jessica and Laura, my own daughters, became active participants in our group, their own experiences with their father's betrayal fueling a fierce determination to support and uplift other women facing similar struggles. It was a source of immense pride for me, watching them channel their pain into a force for positive change. "We may have been dealt a tough hand," Laura would say, echoing Angela's words, "but we're not going to let it define us. We're going to use it as fuel to build something better, something stronger." And build we did. What had started as a small gathering of wounded souls quickly blossomed into a powerful movement, a force for change and empowerment that stretched far beyond the confines of our little support group. We organized fundraisers and awareness campaigns, partnering with local shelters and advocacy organizations to provide resources and support for women in crisis. We lobbied for stronger legal protections and harsher penalties for those who perpetrated emotional and financial abuse. And through it all, we remained a tight-knit sisterhood, bound by our shared experiences and an unwavering commitment to lifting each other up. We celebrated each other's triumphs, big and small, and offered a shoulder to lean on during the inevitable setbacks and challenges. As for Greg, he had become little more than a footnote in our lives, a cautionary tale of what happens when selfishness and deceit are allowed to fester unchecked. His desperate attempts to reconcile or insert himself back into our lives were met with a wall of indifference, a stark reminder that he had forfeited his place in our world the moment he chose to betray us. In the end, his legacy would be one of pain and disappointment, a cautionary tale of what happens when a man puts his own desires above the well-being of those he claims to love. But our legacy, the legacy of the women he had wronged, would be one of resilience, strength, and unwavering sisterhood. As I looked around at the faces of the women who had become my chosen family, I felt a profound sense of gratitude and pride. We had been through hell and back, but we had emerged on the other side stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever before. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but one thing was clear. We would face it together, united by our shared experiences and an unbreakable bond of sisterhood. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would meet them head-on, armed with the knowledge that we were warriors, survivors who had stared down the darkness and emerged victorious. The doorbell chimed, shattering my peaceful morning like a hammer through glass. I knew who it was before I even reached the door. Only one person had the audacity to show up unannounced at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. "Patricia," I said, forcing a smile as I opened the door. What a surprise. My mother-in-law breezed past me, her designer perfume leaving a cloying trail in her wake. "Evelyn, dear, I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd pop by to see how you're settling into your new role." The way she said role made it sound like a dirty word. I bit back a retort, reminding myself that I'd chosen this. I'd left my career to be a full-time housewife, to support Brian's growing business. It was my decision, even if Patricia couldn't fathom why anyone would make such a choice. "Coffee?" I offered, already moving towards the kitchen. "Oh, I suppose," Patricia said, her eyes scanning the living room with barely concealed judgment. "If you have time, I know how busy you must be, keeping house." I gritted my teeth as I prepared the coffee. When I returned, Patricia was running a finger along the mantelpiece, inspecting it for dust. "You know, Evelyn," she began, accepting the mug I offered, "I couldn't help but notice the state of Brian's shirts when he visited last week. Perhaps I could show you a better way to iron them?" "Brian's shirts are fine," I said, my voice tight. "He's never complained." Patricia clucked her tongue. "Oh, he wouldn't, would he? Such a good boy, always so considerate. But a wife should anticipate her husband's needs, don't you think?" I took a deep breath, counting to 10 in my head. "Patricia, I appreciate your concern, but Brian and I are doing just fine. We have our own way of doing things." "I'm sure you do," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "I just worry, you see. It's such a big adjustment, going from a career woman to this." She gestured vaguely at the room. "This is my choice," I said firmly, "and Brian supports me." Patricia's eyes narrowed. "Does he? I wonder if he truly understands what he's given up. A wife who contributes financially, who has her own life outside the home. It's a lot to ask a man to shoulder all that responsibility." My hands clenched around my coffee mug. "Brian and I made this decision together. We're partners." "Of course, dear," Patricia said, patting my knee patronizingly. "I'm sure you believe that. Now why don't you show me what you've done with the guest room? I had some ideas about redecorating." I stood up abruptly. "Actually, Patricia, I have plans this morning. Perhaps we could do this another time?" She looked affronted. "Plans? What could be more important than family?" "I have a life outside of this house," I said, moving towards the door. "And right now, I need to get ready to live it." Patricia gathered her things, her lips pursed in disapproval. "Well, I can see I'm not wanted. I'll just have to tell Brian how inhospitable you were when he gets home." As soon as she was gone, I sagged against the closed door, exhaustion washing over me. That's when I noticed it. My journal, sitting on the side table, slightly askew from where I'd left it. With trembling hands, I picked it up, flipping to the most recent entry. There, in the margin, was a small pencil mark that hadn't been there before. My blood ran cold as realization dawned. Patricia had read my journal, my private thoughts about my struggles, adjusting to this new life, my fears and insecurities. She knew everything. In that moment, as anger and violation washed over me, I knew things would never be the same. Patricia had crossed a line, and I wasn't about to let her get away with it. This meant war. I stormed out of the house, my mind reeling from Patricia's invasion of privacy. The crisp morning air did little to cool my anger as I marched down the sidewalk, no destination in mind. That's when I heard a friendly voice call out, "Evelyn, what's got you in such a tizzy this fine morning?" I turned to see June, my elderly neighbor, tending to her rose bushes, her weathered face creased with concern as she took in my flustered state. "Oh, June," I sighed, feeling the fight drain out of me. "It's my mother-in-law. She's just impossible." June patted the bench beside her. "Come, sit. Tell old June all about it." I hesitated for a moment, then relented. As I settled next to her, the words tumbled out. Patricia's surprise visit, her condescending remarks, and the shocking discovery that she'd read my private journal. June listened intently, her eyes narrowing as I recounted the morning's events. When I finished, she let out a low whistle. That woman's got some nerve, she said, shaking her head. Reminds me of my own mother-in-law, God rest her soul. She was a real piece of work, too. How did you handle it? I asked, desperate for any advice. June chuckled. Not well at first, but I learned something important over the years. You've got to set boundaries, and you've got to stick to them. Boundaries? The concept seemed foreign when it came to Patricia. Absolutely, June nodded firmly. You need to have a frank conversation with her. Let her know in no uncertain terms that her behavior is unacceptable. The thought of confronting Patricia made my stomach churn. I don't know if I can do that, June. She's Brian's mother, and I don't want to cause problems in the family. June's eyes softened. Honey, she's the one causing problems. You have every right to protect your home and your peace of mind. As we talked, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. June's wisdom, born from years of experience, gave me strength I didn't know I had. You know, June said, a mischievous glint in her eye, my Harold always said the best defense is a good offense. Maybe it's time you took the fight to Patricia. I raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Well, June leaned in conspiratorially, you could always give her a taste of her own medicine, show up at her house unannounced, offer some unsolicited advice about her housekeeping. We both burst into laughter at the thought. As our giggles subsided, I felt a newfound resolve settling over me. You're right, June, I said, straightening my shoulders. I need to stand up for myself. I can't let Patricia walk all over me anymore. June squeezed my hand. That's the spirit, dear. Remember, you're not just standing up for yourself. You're standing up for your marriage, for your future family. As I walked home, buoyed by June's support, I began formulating a plan. I'd confront Patricia, set clear boundaries, and make it abundantly clear that her behavior wouldn't be tolerated any longer. But when I reached my front door, I froze. There, taped to the wood, was a note in Patricia's elegant script. Evelyn, I've taken the liberty of rearranging your linen closet. You'll find it's much more efficient now. We'll discuss your homemaking skills further at Sunday dinner. Patricia. My hands shook as I ripped the note from the door. How dare she enter my home without permission? Again. In that moment, all my carefully laid plans evaporated. This wasn't just about setting boundaries anymore. This was war. I stormed into the house, grabbed my phone, and dialed Brian's number. As it rang, I paced the living room, my free hand clenched into a fist. Hello? Brian's voice came through, tinged with concern. He must have sensed my mood even through the phone. Brian, I said, my voice trembling with barely contained fury, we need to talk about your mother, now. The tension in the room was palpable as I faced Patricia across the dining table. Brian sat beside me, his presence a comforting anchor in the storm that was about to break. Patricia, I began, my voice steadier than I felt, we need to talk about boundaries. Her eyebrows arched. Boundaries? I'm not sure I understand, dear. I took a deep breath. You've been overstepping, entering our home without permission, rearranging our things, and... I paused, steeling myself, reading my private journal. Patricia's face flushed, but she didn't deny it. I was only trying to help. As a mother, I have a right to ensure my son's home is well managed. No, you don't, Brian interjected, his voice firm. Mom, Evelyn and I are adults. We don't need your supervision. Patricia's eyes widened, shock evident on her face. Brian, surely you can't mean that. I've always had your best interests at heart. Your intentions don't justify your actions, I said. We're setting clear boundaries now. No more unannounced visits, no more helping without our permission, and absolutely no invading our privacy. Patricia's shock morphed into indignation. This is preposterous. I've done nothing but try to guide you both. Evelyn, you're the one causing a rift in this family with your modern notions and inability to keep a proper home. I felt Brian tense beside me, but I squeezed his hand, silently asking him to let me handle this. Patricia, this isn't about my homemaking skills or your guidance. It's about respect. We're asking you to respect our autonomy as a couple. For a moment, Patricia was silent, her eyes darting between Brian and me. Then her face hardened. I see. If that's how you feel, perhaps it's best if I limit my involvement in your lives. Mom, Brian started, but Patricia cut him off with a wave of her hand. No. I understand perfectly. You've made your choice clear. She stood, gathering her purse. But mark my words, Evelyn. This family needs stability, tradition. The only way you'll ever truly be part of it is if you give Brian a child, a son, preferably. Then maybe you'll understand the importance of family. Her words hit me like a slap. I stood up, anger coursing through me. How dare you? But Patricia was already heading for the door. She paused at the threshold, turning back with a vindictive smile. I'll be waiting for that announcement. Until then, enjoy your independence. The door slammed behind her, leaving a ringing silence in its wake. Brian wrapped his arms around me as I sagged against him. I'm so sorry, Evelyn. I had no idea she'd react like that. I shook my head, fighting back tears. It's not your fault. But Brian, what she said about having a child. He pulled back, looking into my eyes. Hey, don't let her get to you. We'll have children when we're ready, not because my mother demands it. I nodded, but Patricia's words had planted a seed of doubt. What if she was right? What if I could never truly be part of this family without producing an heir? As if reading my thoughts, Brian cupped my face in his hands. You are my family, Evelyn. You're all I need. I managed a weak smile, but inside, my mind was racing. Despite our victory in setting boundaries, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. Patricia's parting words echoed in my head, a sinister prophecy that threatened to overshadow our future. That night, as Brian slept peacefully beside me, I stared at the ceiling, my hand resting on my flat stomach. The thought that had been niggling at the back of my mind all evening finally crystallized into a startling realization. I was late, very late. My heart raced as I contemplated the possibility. Could I be pregnant? And if I was, how would this change things with Patricia? Would it bring peace to our family, or would it only give her more ammunition to interfere in our lives? As dawn broke, I made a decision. I would find out for sure, but I wouldn't tell Brian. Not yet. This was my secret to keep, at least until I figured out what it meant for our future. The pregnancy test trembled in my hands, 2 pink lines staring back at me. I was right. I was pregnant. A whirlwind of emotions swept through me. Joy, fear, excitement, and dread all tangled together in a complicated knot. I took a deep breath, steadying myself against the bathroom sink. This was what we wanted, wasn't it? A family of our own. But Patricia's words echoed in my mind, casting a shadow over what should have been a moment of pure happiness. When I told Brian that evening, his face lit up with unbridled joy. He swept me into his arms, spinning me around our kitchen. We're going to be parents, he exclaimed, his eyes shining with tears. I laughed, letting his excitement wash over me, pushing my worries aside for the moment. Yes, we are. As the weeks passed, my belly grew, and so did Patricia's interference. It started small, a book on proper prenatal care left on our doorstep, unsolicited advice about my diet slipped into conversation during Sunday dinners, but it quickly escalated. One afternoon, I came home to find Patricia in our nursery, directing a team of painters. What's going on here? I demanded, my hands instinctively cradling my swollen belly. Patricia turned, a serene smile on her face. Oh, Evelyn, I'm just helping you get the nursery ready. Blue is the perfect color for a boy's room, don't you think? I felt the blood drain from my face. We don't know the gender yet, Patricia, and even if we did, we didn't ask for your help. Her smile faltered. But surely you want a boy? To carry on the family name? We want a healthy baby, I said firmly. Boy or girl? Patricia's eyes narrowed. You're being naive, Evelyn. A son is what this family needs. Brian needs an heir. I opened my mouth to argue, but a sharp pain in my abdomen made me gasp. Patricia was at my side in an instant, her face a mask of concern. Are you all right? Should I call the doctor? I waved her off, taking deep breaths until the pain subsided. I'm fine, it's just stress. Patricia's expression softened. You see, this is why you need my help. You're clearly overwhelmed. I straightened up, fixing her with a hard stare. What I need is for you to respect our boundaries. Please leave, Patricia. Now. For a moment, I thought she might argue, but she simply pursed her lips and gathered her things. As she passed me, she paused. I'm only trying to help, Evelyn. One day, you'll understand. After she left, I sank onto the couch, my hands shaking. The stress of dealing with Patricia was taking its toll, and I knew it wasn't good for the baby. That night, I confided in Brian about my concerns. He listened, his face growing more troubled with each word. I had no idea it had gotten this bad, he said, running a hand through his hair. I'll talk to her, make her understand. No, I interrupted. I don't think that's enough anymore, Brian. Your mother, she's not going to change, and I can't keep dealing with this stress. It's not good for me or the baby. Brian took my hands in his. What are you saying? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to propose. I think I should go stay with my mother for the rest of the pregnancy. His eyes widened in shock. Evelyn, no, this is our home, our family. We can't let my mother drive you away. It's not about letting her win, I explained. It's about doing what's best for our child. I need peace, Brian. I need to be able to enjoy this pregnancy without constantly looking over my shoulder. Brian was quiet for a long moment, his internal struggle visible on his face. Finally, he nodded slowly. If that's what you need, then that's what we'll do. But Evelyn, promise me this is temporary. Promise me you'll come back. I leaned in, pressing my forehead to his. I promise. This is our home, our family. I'm just taking a step back to protect it. As we sat there, holding each other, I felt a mix of relief and sadness wash over me. This wasn't how I imagined my pregnancy would be, but I knew in my heart it was the right decision. For now, at least, I would find sanctuary away from Patricia's overbearing presence. But a nagging voice in the back of my mind wondered, would this really solve our problems or just delay the inevitable confrontation? The gentle hum of my mother's sewing machine filled the quiet afternoon as I sat by the window, absently rubbing my swollen belly. It had been 3 weeks since I'd moved in with her, and the peace I'd found here was a balm to my frayed nerves. My phone buzzed, interrupting my reverie. Another message from Patricia. I hesitated before opening it, bracing myself for what I might find. Evelyn, how could you abandon your home like this? Brian needs you. Are you so selfish that you'd put your own comfort above your family's needs? I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath to calm the anger rising within me. This wasn't the first message of its kind, and I doubted it would be the last. Everything okay, honey? My mother asked, pausing her work. I forced a smile. Just Patricia again. Nothing I can't handle. But as the days passed, Patricia's messages became more frequent and more vicious. Each one chipped away at my resolve, planting seeds of doubt in my mind. A real wife would be by her husband's side. I always knew you weren't cut out for this family. That child deserves better than a mother who runs away from her responsibilities. One evening, as I sat on the porch swing, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Brian. Hey, love. How are you feeling? Mom's been asking about you. She seems pretty upset that you're not here. Maybe we should reconsider this arrangement. My heart sank. Even here, hundreds of miles away, Patricia's influence was seeping into our lives, manipulating Brian's thoughts. I was about to respond when another message from Patricia came through. This one was different. Attached was a photo of our nursery, completely redecorated in garish shades of blue and green. Since you're not here to prepare for my grandson, I took the liberty of doing it myself. I hope you appreciate all I'm doing for this family in your absence. Something inside me snapped. The constant barrage of guilt-tripping messages, the manipulation of Brian, and now this blatant disregard for our wishes. It was too much. With shaking hands, I pulled up Patricia's contact information. My finger hovered over the block button as a war raged within me. Was this too drastic? Would it cause irreparable damage to our family? But then I felt a strong kick from my baby, as if urging me on. In that moment, clarity washed over me. This wasn't just about me anymore. I had to protect my child from Patricia's toxic influence. I pressed block. A wave of relief washed over me, followed quickly by a pang of guilt. I dialed Brian's number, knowing I owed him an explanation. Evelyn, is everything okay? His voice was laced with concern. Brian, I just blocked your mother's number, I said, my voice trembling slightly. There was a long pause on the other end. Oh, he finally said. I see. I'm sorry, but I had to. The constant messages, the guilt-tripping, the redecorating of the nursery without our permission, it's too much. I need to focus on our baby now, not on managing your mother's feelings. I heard Brian sigh heavily. I understand. I'm sorry it came to this. I should have done more to shield you from her. It's not your fault, I assured him. But Brian, we need to talk about what happens after the baby is born. I won't bring our child into an environment where Patricia feels she can overstep our boundaries at will. You're right, Brian said, his voice firm. When you come home, things will be different. I promise. As we talked, making plans for our return and discussing how to handle Patricia going forward, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in months, I felt truly hopeful about our future. That night, as I lay in bed, my hands resting protectively over my belly, I made a silent vow to my unborn child. No matter what challenges lay ahead, I would always put their well-being first. Patricia might be family by marriage, but this little one was flesh of my flesh, and I would move heaven and earth to give them the peaceful, loving home they deserved. The first cry of my newborn daughter filled the delivery room, and in that moment, all the pain and exhaustion melted away. I looked up at Brian, tears streaming down his face as he cut the umbilical cord. Our little Emily had arrived, perfect and beautiful. As I cradled her in my arms, a sense of peace washed over me. The struggles with Patricia seemed a distant memory. This was our new beginning. 3 days later, we were ready to go home. As Brian pulled into our driveway, I felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. Home, our sanctuary, but also the battleground where we'd faced so many conflicts with Patricia. "Ready?" Brian asked, squeezing my hand. I nodded, clutching Emily close to my chest as we walked to the front door. The moment we stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. The air felt different, stale somehow. "Brian," I whispered, "did you leave any windows open?" He shook his head, his brow furrowing as he looked around. That's when I noticed it, the empty spaces where my things used to be. My grandmother's antique vase gone from the mantel. The painting we'd bought on our honeymoon missing from the wall. "What the hell?" Brian muttered, moving quickly through the house. I followed him, my heart pounding. As we entered our bedroom, I gasped. My jewelry box was gone, along with the vintage dresser it had sat on. Even my clothes were missing from the closet. "This can't be happening," I said, my voice trembling. "We were robbed?" Brian's face had turned ashen. "No," he said quietly. "Look." He pointed to a note on the bed. With shaking hands, I picked it up, recognizing the elegant script immediately. "Evelyn and Brian, I've taken the liberty of clearing out some of the clutter in your home. You'll find it's much more suitable for raising a child now. I've sold the unnecessary items. Consider it a lesson in responsibility and prioritizing what truly matters in life. I look forward to meeting my grandchild. Love, Patricia." The paper crumpled in my fist as a wave of fury washed over me. She sold my things? She broke into our home and sold my possessions? Brian was already on the phone, pacing the room. "Mom, what have you done?" "No, you had no right. This is theft, Mom. Do you understand that?" As he argued with Patricia, I sank onto the bed, clutching Emily to my chest. She began to fuss, sensing my distress. I tried to soothe her, but my own emotions were spiraling out of control. This was supposed to be our homecoming, our fresh start. Instead, Patricia had violated our space, our trust in the most egregious way possible. Brian ended the call, his face a mask of anger and disbelief. "She says she did it for us, to teach us about responsibility. She won't tell me where she sold the items." I stood up, my body shaking with rage. "This ends now, Brian. I won't let her terrorize us anymore. I won't let her anywhere near Emily." "Evelyn." "No," I cut him off. "No more excuses, no more second chances. We need to confront her, face to face, and this time there will be consequences." Brian nodded slowly, his jaw set. "You're right, this has gone too far. We'll go to her house right now." As we prepared to leave, I looked down at Emily, peacefully asleep in her carrier. My resolve strengthened. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about protecting our daughter, our family. We drove to Patricia's house in tense silence. As we pulled up, I saw her peering out the window, a smug smile on her face. She thought she'd won, that we'd come crawling back, grateful for her interference. How wrong she was. I stepped out of the car, Emily in one arm, my other hand clenched in a fist. This was it, the moment of reckoning. As we approached the front door, I knew that whatever happened next would change our family forever. And I was ready for it. The door swung open, and there stood Patricia, her face a mask of false concern. "Oh, you're here. I was so worried when you didn't call. Come in, let me see my granddaughter." I clutched Emily tighter to my chest, my body tensing. "Not so fast, Patricia. We need to talk about what you've done." Her smile faltered for a moment before returning, brittle and forced. "What I've done? I've only been helping, dear. You'll see." "Helping?" Brian's voice was low and dangerous. You call breaking into our home and selling our possessions helping? Patricia's eyes widened in feigned innocence. Breaking in? Don't be ridiculous, Brian. I have a key, and I was merely decluttering for the baby's sake. I felt my anger rising, threatening to boil over. Those weren't your things to declutter, Patricia. You had no right. I had every right, she snapped, her facade cracking. I'm family. I'm trying to teach you responsibility, to show you what really matters. You should be thanking me. Brian stepped forward, placing himself between Patricia and me. Mom, what you did was illegal. It was a violation of our privacy and our trust. We want our things back. Now. Patricia's face hardened. I'm afraid that's not possible. I've already sold most of it. The room seemed to spin around me. All those precious memories gone. I felt tears pricking at my eyes, but I blinked them back. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry. Then you'll pay us back, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Every penny. Patricia laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. With what money? Everything I had went into raising Brian, into supporting this family. You owe me, if anything. Brian's shoulders tensed. No, Mom, we don't owe you anything. Not anymore. The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia's eyes darted between us, realization slowly dawning on her face. What are you saying? She whispered. Brian took a deep breath. We're saying that this ends now. You're no longer welcome in our home. You're no longer a part of our lives. Patricia stumbled back as if she'd been struck. You can't mean that. I'm your mother. A mother respects boundaries, I said. A mother supports her children, not terrorizes them. You've shown us that you can't be trusted, Patricia. We won't let you hurt our family anymore. Tears welled up in Patricia's eyes, but I steeled myself against them. How many times had she used those tears to manipulate us? Brian, she pleaded, reaching for her son. You can't do this. I'm all alone. I need you. For a moment, I saw Brian waver. This was his mother, after all, the woman who had raised him. But then he looked at me, at Emily sleeping peacefully in my arms, and his resolve hardened. No, Mom, you need help, but not from us. Not anymore. We're leaving now, and I don't want you to contact us again. Patricia's face contorted with rage. You ungrateful children, after everything I've done for you. You'll regret this, mark my words. As we turned to leave, Patricia lunged forward, her hands outstretched towards Emily. If you're going to abandon me, at least let me hold my granddaughter one last time. I reacted instinctively, twisting away to shield Emily. In the process, I lost my balance, stumbling backwards. Time seemed to slow as I felt myself falling. Emily clutched tightly to my chest. Brian's strong arms caught me just before I hit the ground. Emily woke with a startled cry, and the sound seemed to snap Patricia out of her frenzy. She stood there, hands still outstretched, horror dawning on her face as she realized what she'd almost done. Get out, Brian growled, his voice trembling with barely contained fury. Get out now, or I swear I'll call the police. As we hurried to our car, Emily's cries piercing the night air, I looked back one last time. Patricia stood in the doorway, a small, broken figure silhouetted against the light. In that moment, I felt no triumph, no satisfaction, only a deep, aching sadness for what could have been, and the knowledge that our lives would never be the same again. 6 months passed without a word from Patricia. Brian and I focused on our new life with Emily, cherishing every moment of parenthood. The peace we'd found was healing, but the shadow of Patricia's actions still lingered. Then on a crisp autumn morning, a letter arrived. I recognized the handwriting immediately, my heart racing as I opened it. Dear Evelyn and Brian, I hope this letter finds you well. I'm writing to you from a place of deep reflection and regret. The past months have been difficult. I've lost my job, my home, and most importantly, my family. I realize now the gravity of my actions and the pain I've caused. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I truly believed I was acting in your best interests. I see now how wrong I was. If you're willing, I'd like to meet, to apologize in person and to make amends, if possible. With love and remorse, Patricia. I showed the letter to Brian, watching his face as he read. What do you think? I asked softly. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I don't know, Evelyn. Part of me wants to believe her, but after everything... I nodded, understanding his hesitation. Maybe we should meet her, hear her out at least. A week later we sat in a neutral coffee shop, Emily sleeping peacefully in her stroller. When Patricia walked in, I barely recognized her. Gone was the imperious woman who had terrorized our lives. In her place was someone who looked small, tired, and deeply sad. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," she said, her voice trembling slightly as she sat down. Brian nodded stiffly. "You said you wanted to apologize." Patricia took a deep breath. "Yes, I'm so sorry. For everything. I see now how my actions were not just misguided, but cruel and destructive. I was so caught up in my own ideas of what was best that I couldn't see the damage I was causing." She turned to me, tears in her eyes. "Evelyn, I treated you abominably. I was jealous of your relationship with Brian, threatened by the changes in his life. Instead of supporting you both, I tried to control everything. I'm truly deeply sorry." I felt a lump forming in my throat. "Patricia, you hurt us deeply. You violated our trust, our home, our privacy. How can we ever trust you again?" She nodded, wiping away a tear. "I know. I don't expect you to trust me. I don't even expect you to forgive me. I hope that maybe someday we can find a way to have some kind of relationship. For Emily's sake, if nothing else." Brian leaned forward, his face serious. "Mom, we appreciate your apology, but you need to understand, things can never go back to how they were. If we decide to allow you back into our lives, it will be on our terms with clear boundaries that you must respect." Patricia nodded eagerly. "Of course, anything. I've been seeing a therapist, trying to understand why I acted the way I did. I want to be better, for all of you." As we talked, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The anger and resentment I'd been carrying began to dissipate, replaced by a cautious hope. We didn't forgive Patricia that day. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. But we took the first steps towards healing. We agreed to occasional, supervised visits with Emily. Patricia would continue her therapy, and we would take things slowly, one day at a time. As we left the coffee shop, Brian squeezed my hand. "Are you okay?" he asked. I looked down at Emily, still sleeping peacefully, unaware of the complex emotions swirling around her. Then I looked at Brian, the man who had stood by me through it all. "You know what? I think I am," I said, smiling. "We've been through so much, but we've come out stronger. Whatever happens with your mother, I know we can handle it together." Brian pulled me close, kissing the top of my head. "Together," he agreed. As we walked home, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but we had each other. We had our beautiful daughter, and we had the strength that comes from overcoming adversity together. In the end, that was all that mattered. We were a family, bound not just by blood, but by love, respect, and the shared experience of fighting for what truly matters. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, I knew we would face them united, stronger than ever before.